sent the message, you saw the notification, they read it. And then, nothing. No reply, no explanation. Just silence. Hours pass, then days, and suddenly your mind starts racing. Did I say something wrong? Are they angry? Did something happen? Or are they ignoring me on purpose? If you've ever experienced the silent treatment from a narcissist, you know how deeply unsettling it feels. But what most people don't realize is that this silence is rarely random. In many narcissistic relationships, silence is not absence, it's a strategy. And by the end of this video, you'll understand exactly what that silence is doing psychologically, to you and to them. The silent treatment is one of the most confusing experiences in a narcissistic relationship because it creates a strange emotional contradiction. On one hand, nothing is happening. No yelling, no arguments, no confrontation. But internally, everything feels chaotic. Your mind starts searching for answers, replaying conversations, analyzing every message, every tone, every moment that came before the silence. And the longer the silence lasts, the more powerful the psychological effect becomes. But the truth is something many survivors only understand much later. The silent treatment is rarely about needing space. It is often about control. Healthy people sometimes need time to process emotions. They might say, I need some time to think. I'll talk to you tomorrow. There is still communication, still acknowledgement, still respect. But the narcissistic silent treatment is different. It often arrives suddenly, without warning, without explanation, and without any clear end. And that unpredictability is exactly what makes it so powerful. Because the silence creates emotional imbalance. One person withdraws, the other person starts chasing answers. And in that moment, the power dynamic shifts. When the narcissist goes silent, something very specific begins happening psychologically. Your brain enters uncertainty mode. And the human brain does not tolerate uncertainty well. It wants resolution. So it begins searching for meaning. Maybe I was too emotional. Maybe I shouldn't have said that. Maybe I should apologize. Maybe I should fix this. And before long, the focus of the conflict shifts. Instead of examining the narcissist's behavior, you start examining yourself. And that shift is incredibly important because it places emotional responsibility back on you, even if the silence was never about your behavior in the first place. There's also a biological component to this dynamic. When someone suddenly withdraws affection or communication, your brain registers it as a threat to connection. And connection is one of the most powerful emotional needs humans have. So the nervous system activates, stress hormones increase, cortisol rises. Your mind becomes hyper-focused on restoring the relationship. This is why people often feel an intense urge to reach out again during the silent treatment, to send another message, to apologize, to repair the connection, even if they weren't the ones who created the conflict. And the narcissist often understands this dynamic very well, whether consciously or unconsciously. But there is another part of the silent treatment that many survivors don't see while they're inside the relationship. Because while you are sitting with the anxiety of the silence, the narcissist is often doing something very different. They are regulating their sense of control. For someone with strong narcissistic patterns, emotional control inside a relationship becomes extremely important. Not necessarily because they want to dominate the other person in an obvious way, but because control stabilizes their internal world. Many narcissistic personalities experience emotions in a very unstable way. They can feel admiration one moment and intense irritation the next. They can feel deeply attached during one phase of their relationship and suddenly detached in another. So when conflict appears or when they feel criticized, challenged, or emotionally exposed, something uncomfortable happens internally. Their sense of identity feels threatened. And instead of processing that discomfort through communication or reflection, they often move toward a defensive strategy. Withdrawal. Silence becomes a psychological shield, a way to avoid vulnerability, a way to avoid accountability, but also a way to reestablish power inside the relationship dynamic. Because the moment communication stops, the emotional center of gravity shifts. The person who withdraws becomes the one controlling when the connection returns. And the person left in silence becomes the one trying to restore it. But the silent treatment also serves another purpose that many people overlook. It creates emotional confusion. When communication disappears without explanation, the brain begins filling in the gaps. And those gaps are rarely filled with neutral thoughts. They are usually filled with self-doubt. Maybe I pushed too hard. Maybe I was too emotional. Maybe I misunderstood. Maybe I should apologize. And slowly the emotional narrative shifts. The focus moves away from the narcissist's withdrawal and toward your supposed responsibility for the silence. This is one of the reasons the silent treatment can be so psychologically powerful, because it changes the emotional story without saying a single word. But there's also something else happening in many narcissistic relationships during these periods of silence. The narcissist may be seeking validation somewhere else, sometimes through friends, sometimes through social attention, sometimes through what psychologists call alternative supply. This doesn't always mean another romantic partner. It can simply mean environments where admiration is easier to obtain. Work, social media, new acquaintances, places where their image remains intact. Because admiration from new or less familiar people often feels safer than vulnerability inside a close relationship. And while this is happening, the silence inside the relationship continues doing its work. It destabilizes the other person emotionally. It increases their desire to reconnect. And when communication finally returns, it often arrives without real resolution. Maybe a casual message, maybe a small joke, maybe a shift in topic, almost as if nothing happened. And that moment can feel strangely relieving because the tension finally ends. But that relief also reinforces the cycle. The nervous system relaxes, connection returns, and for a moment the relationship feels normal again until the next conflict, until the next emotional withdrawal, until the silence returns. Over time, many survivors begin noticing something important. The silence rarely solves anything. It never leads to deeper understanding. It never resolves the underlying problems in the relationship, and instead it resets the emotional tension temporarily. And that realization can become a turning point, because once you start seeing the silent treatment as a repeating pattern rather than an isolated event, the dynamic begins to change. You stop interpreting each episode as a new mystery and start recognizing it as part of a cycle. And recognizing the cycle is often the first step toward breaking it. Not by forcing the other person to change, but by changing how you respond to the silence itself. Instead of chasing the connection immediately, you begin observing the pattern. Instead of assuming responsibility for the withdrawal, you begin questioning the behavior behind it. And those small internal shifts can slowly weaken the psychological grip the silence once had. Because manipulation loses much of its power the moment it becomes predictable. Silence creates distance. Distance creates anxiety. Anxiety creates pursuit. And pursuit restores the narcissist's sense of control. Because when you chase the silence, something subtle happens. The narcissist regains emotional dominance. They become the one deciding when communication resumes, when attention returns, when the relationship feels normal again. And that unpredictability can become addictive. This pattern also feeds into something called a trauma bond. Periods of emotional withdrawal followed by sudden moments of attention, connection returns, relief floods the nervous system, dopamine spikes, and the relationship suddenly feels intense again. But that relief comes from escaping the anxiety the silence created, not from genuine emotional repair. And over time, the nervous system begins associating emotional closeness with cycles of stress and relief. The silent treatment hurts because it activates one of our deepest emotional fears: being ignored, being dismissed, being invisible. Humans are wired to seek acknowledgement from the people closest to them. So when someone you love suddenly behaves as if you don't exist, the emotional impact can feel devastating. But understanding the pattern begins to change how you experience it. Because once you recognize silence as a strategy, it stops feeling like a mystery and starts looking like a pattern. One of the most powerful moments in recovery happens when survivors stop reacting to the silence the way they once did. Instead of chasing, instead of apologizing, instead of trying to decode every message, they begin observing the pattern. And that shift changes the entire dynamic. Because manipulation requires participation. And when participation stops, the strategy begins to lose its power. Breaking the psychological impact of the silent treatment is not just about emotional awareness. It also requires nervous system recovery, consistent sleep, regular meals, magnesium-rich foods, sunlight, movement, supportive relationships. These simple biological foundations help stabilize the nervous system after prolonged emotional stress. And when the body stabilizes, the mind gains clarity. The silence that once felt unbearable slowly becomes easier to see for what it really was. Not a reflection of your worth, not proof you were difficult to love, but a pattern someone used because they lacked healthier ways to communicate. And recognizing that truth can become the beginning of real emotional freedom. If you've ever experienced the silent treatment in a relationship, you're not alone. Comment below, how long did the silence last? Your story might help someone else realize what they experienced wasn't normal, and it wasn't their fault. Subscribe if you're rebuilding your life after narcissistic abuse. You survived the relationship. Here, we help you survive it too.